You know, obviously it was a massive show of support by the U.S. for the Ukrainian people. Today, many people, you know, talking in cafes and restaurants, you know, Biden's visit on the tip of their tongue. Though, you know, this is also a part of the world where they choose their words carefully, judiciously. And while they're happy that President Biden came, one thing that many people are saying is they want to see action. And action for a lot of people means more aid. We know today that the U.S. promised $500 million, but many want to see, you know, long-range missiles. They want to see protection from the sky. I think every little bit of assistance is critical right now. It's been well documented that, you know, here in Ukraine on the front lines, they're using more ammunition than they can get restocked. You know, many of the NATO countries where some of this ammunition's been coming in from, they can't make it fast enough. So every little bit counts right now. You know, this week, as we know, it marks 1 year of the Russian invasion, and many are sitting back waiting to see what will come. Well, we know that the fighting has definitely intensified on the Eastern Front.
Yeah, and with that 1 year anniversary coming up, it's a bit of a somber anniversary because it's the war, but could it also be seen as a celebration of the resistance? And I'm just wondering how people there are preparing for it and how they're...
Yeah, you know, many, earlier today I went to a hospital where we followed with a psychotherapist and psychologists who are there helping those not just with their physical wounds but with the mental wounds and the toll that this 12 months has taken on the citizens and the soldiers here in Ukraine. And many say that, you know, one soldier said that, you know, this war was going to happen and it's here and they just want to get it over with. Others saying that, you know, if this takes another year, if this takes another 5 years, they're in this for the fight. You know, also we heard air raid sirens today. You know, while President Biden was with President Zelensky today in Kyiv, you heard those air raid sirens. We heard them here as well in Lviv. We were inside a hospital actually with a patient when the air raid sirens went off, and everyone kind of stopped, looked outside, took stock of the situation, and then they carried on.
It's amazing how people, as you sort of said that, and then they just carried on. Has this just become part of normal daily life now there?
It definitely has become part of normal daily life. Even those suffering from PTSD aren't too rattled by the air raid sirens. It's other sounds that they find triggering for them. Though local officials, especially this week, are warning people when those air raid sirens do hit to take cover. You know, most hospitals, hotels, most places, schools, they all have bunkers. They all have bomb shelters to go into. Local officials asking people to heed those warnings this week as we wait and see what could potentially be in store.
A lot of people waiting for that. Now, there is a significant political impact of this visit. Not only is it a strong sign of support, it also sends a direct message to the Kremlin ahead of that anniversary of the Russian invasion. So what do Ukrainians hope will come out of today's visit? Well, Alexei Goncharenko is a Ukrainian MP with the European Solidarity Party. Mr. Goncharenko, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate this.
Thank you very much for your invitation.
I wanted to start by asking you what message today's visit sent the Kremlin and Vladimir Putin.
The message is very clear that Putin will lose this war, and there is no fatigue in the West, and the West will be with Ukraine as long as it takes. So it's much better for Putin to stop the war now, before the disaster happens. So better to start everything, to finish everything right now, and that is in his hands.
Do you see a change potentially this week? And I say that because that symbolism of having the U.S. president there, and you're saying that is a clear message. Do you think he will act on that message that will be sent?
Well, we will see very soon, but it's up to him. The best option he has is to listen to this message, to stop the war, to get out from Ukraine. He will still control 1/7 of the land mass of the planet. What's the problem? So if he will decide another way to continue the war, I think that him and Russia will receive a disaster.
I wanted to ask you what was more important today, the symbolism of having the U.S. president visit Ukraine or the $500 million in military aid that President Biden has promised to deliver?
Both are important. That's a false choice. I mean, for us, it's important a new package of support. But at the same time, the fact that President Biden came to Ukraine exactly at the moment and in the head of Putin, that would be a time for preparing a military parade on Krещатик, commemorating the first anniversary of his great success. But at the end of the day, in 1 year, he has just big losses. Russia is in disaster, and in Kiev is President Biden. What can be more powerful?
Now, Ukraine has asked for fighter jets, but Western allies have been reluctant to even discuss that. You were at the Munich Security Conference just last week. Did you see any progress on the conversation of fighter jets to Ukraine?
Absolutely. I posed a question to Prime Minister of the UK, Rishi Sunak, openly, publicly, and he answered on my question, saying that the United Kingdom starts the training of Ukrainian pilots. That is the most important, because without training, for us, these new Western, more modern fighter jets is just a piece of metal on the wheels. So that's why it's so great that the United Kingdom shows leadership and will first start the training of our pilots. That's a very huge step towards the delivery of this weaponry to Ukraine.
It's a huge step, but when will the jets come? Did the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom say anything about that?
No, it will take months. What we need today, which we can use right now, is in long-range missiles, because we have launchers, HIMARSes, we have a trained crew. The only thing we're lacking is the long-range missiles themselves. So that's what one of the topics that me personally I raised during the Munich Security Conference, trying to push our allies to do this.
Now, there are concerns that China could send weapons to help Russia. How worried are you about that?
I am worried about China. China is definitely, they're more neutral, but at the same time, neutrality towards Russia. May they come into the situation with their ammunition? Unfortunately, yes. That's why I appreciate that what is done by the United States to prevent this.
But what is there left to be done diplomatically now to make sure that China doesn't go and fully support Russia? I know you're saying that in a sense that they've been neutral but kind of siding on the side of Russia here. So do you think that there needs to be more work done on that to prevent China from really sort of entering the fray and helping Russia?
Yeah, we need to do more, but at the same time, the final decision will be in the hands of China in any way. But we need to show to China they're doing like this. They're moving their country also. They're joining the losers, because Russia is a loser. If they want to join loser, that's their own choice.
Now, I wanted to ask you, because it's been nearly 1 year since this war started, and in that time, Western allies have been able to help Ukraine keep going here. Are you worried that it's going to be hard to maintain that support for a longer term? Because once we get beyond the 1 year point, that is still a critical time. We are expecting that Russian spring offensive. Are you concerned that the support will not be there for the longer term, even in the months and even 1 more year?
You know, it's not a question of to worry or not to worry. It's not the question to be concerned or not. That's the question of job. That's something which we should do, because we have all clear arguments which show to American people, to Canadian people, that this war is much more wider than the war of Russia against Ukraine. This is the war which will define at least next decades coming and the first half of the 21st century. This is the war of dictatorships against the freedom. So that's why it's so important. And that's what we need to explain to people. And if we will explain it, people will understand it and will support Ukraine.
How much longer can Ukraine go?
We'll go as long as it takes, because for us, it's a question, it's existential. Russians are committing genocide on the occupied territories. I have two sons. So if I don't want my sons to be killed or to be taken to Russia in order to make from them Russians, I need to fight till the end.
And do you think that it will last longer, another year, a year beyond that, do you think?
I hope that will last not so long, but I am ready that it will last as it will last.
Mr. Goncharenko, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate this.
Thank you very much.
Coming up, Premier François Legault puts pressure on the Prime Minister to help with Roxham Road. Why does Quebec want the feds to redirect asylum seekers to other provinces? We'll ask Quebec's minister responsible for Canadian relations when Power Play returns after this. Premier François Legault is demanding the feds send asylum seekers irregularly entering Quebec to other provinces. Legault laid it all out in a letter sent to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Now, translated from French, it reads in part that asylum seekers entering irregularly should now be redirected to other provinces because Quebec has done more than its share of the effort over the last years. Premier Legault is also calling for the federal government to urgently conclude renegotiations over the Safe Third Country Agreement with the United States as soon as possible. Now, the Safe Third Country Agreement does not currently cover irregular border crossings. Roxham Road, the popular irregular border crossing, has become a flashpoint in Quebec federal relations. More than 30,000 asylum seekers have irregularly entered into Quebec last year, mostly through that Roxham Road crossing. However, the federal government is redirecting migrants. According to Quebec's immigration minister, last week, the majority of the 380 people who crossed Roxham Road 2 weekends ago have been redirected to Ontario, where a block of hotel rooms were reserved. We asked Federal Immigration Minister Sean Fraser's office for a comment on this, but we did not get one in time for this show. So, will Legault's letter force the feds to do more at Roxham Road? Earlier, I spoke to Jean-François Roberge, Quebec's minister responsible for Canadian relations and the Canadian francophonie. Hi, Minister Roberge. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure.
So this has been an issue for years. I just wanted to know, why did Premier Legault send this letter now?
Well, as you said, it was an issue for years. But here in Quebec, we are proud of our tradition of welcoming refugees. You know, as long as it was like 1,000, 2,000, it was okay. But now our capacity are exceeded. We cannot no longer take care of all those refugees, you know. We have some social assistance issues, healthcare issues, housing issues. So this is why Prime Minister Legault wrote a letter to Mr. Trudeau. Something has to change, and it's a crisis.
Now, in the letter, Premier Legault also notes how a large proportion of the asylum seekers don't speak French, and that makes integration more complicated. I wanted to ask you, if most of these people did speak French, would you not be asking for the federal government's help?
No, because it's a question of numbers. You know, if we have a housing crisis, if we have education crisis, you know, it's like we have to build 13 new schools within 1 year to take care of all those kids. You know, it's impossible. Even if they would speak French, it's a question of numbers, and we simply don't have the capacity to handle that many people right now. This is why other provinces have to do their share. We did more than our share in Quebec.
So what does that mean, do their share? Because we know that some of these asylum seekers have now been sent to Eastern Ontario. When you say do their share, are you basically looking for the federal government to bring buses to Quebec to bring some of these asylum seekers to other provinces?
Well, yes, and we'll say that we appreciate that within the previous week, Most of those irregular asylum seekers, coming through Roxham Road, has been transported to other provinces to take care of them. As in the fact is to take care of them, to give them all they need. But we want to be sure that we come to a sustainable system because, in the past year, in 2022, here in Quebec, we received 39,000 people crossing Roxham Road, So irregular entries are huge here, and we don't have the capacity to take care of them right now. This is why it's really important that the federal government, control the borders. Sometimes federal government wants to tell the provinces how to manage healthcare, how to manage environment, how to manage education, but they have to manage borders. It's their responsibility.
So what's the Quebec government's ask? Do they want Roxham Road and that opening there, because it is an opening, do they want that just to be completely closed off? Because conversely, some people are saying is that if you close off Roxham Road, that the problem will just pop up somewhere else along the border.
A simple solution won't do it. We have to renegotiate with United States the Safe Third Country Agreement. And it's important that for Mr. Trudeau, this is now the first priority. It's the duty of the Premier of Canada to take control of the borders of Canada. I think Canadian thinks it's important, of course. So there's a meeting with Mr. Biden coming soon, and this should be the number one priority for Mr. Trudeau.
Has Premier Legault spoken to Prime Minister Trudeau about making it the number one priority? And if so, what has he heard about that?
Well, Mr. Trudeau said he's open mind. He wants to discuss it with Mr. Biden, but we don't have to discuss it. We have to renegotiate it. It's really important because I think that now that other provinces, they raised their hand. They said, yes, we can take those new asylum seekers, even though they go through irregular entries. It will be difficult for other provinces because the numbers are huge. It's hundreds and hundreds every day, and maybe now it will be a national issue, not only a Quebec issue, but a national issue. It's a Canadian issue. And it's important that the federal government take some notes and make it a top priority now.
What about the discussions that your government, the provincial government, is having with officials in the United States? Is that really making any progress at all?
Well, Mr. Legault talked to Americans the last week, the ambassador, and they had some great discussion. And Mr. Legault bring this matter, of course. I think they are open minded, but they have to realize that for us, it's not a question, like others. It's really important because it's a humanitarian issue. We want to take care of them. We want to give them a roof. We want to give them all they need to go through winters, through the winter here in Canada. And just to say that, oh yeah, we are gentle, we are happy, we are open minded, we want to welcome refugees. It's not enough, When they are two number, if they are two number, we can't respect what we want to do with them.
Just lastly, I only have about 30 seconds left, but your government is also seeking financial reimbursement of all costs related to the reception and integration of asylum seekers. How much money are you asking for?
Well, we will count it because the flow and the pressure on our public services are huge, education, housing, social assistance, health. We're talking about more than 50,000 people living here in Quebec since 3 years they came, and it's really long for the government, for the federal government to go through all the procedure. So we will come back with a number, but we want an engagement from the federal government that they will pay the bills.
Mr. Roberge, I'm going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate it.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
And our front bench panel is standing by to dig into this a little later on in the show. It's Miriam Monsef, Larissa Waller, Kathleen Monk, and Laura Stone. But first, we'll have a look at the other political stories today in the world. The list is coming up next on Power Play. Welcome back to Power Play. This is the list, news that you need to know today.
It was very shaky, we hardly stood up. It was very difficult.
At least 3 people have been killed and more than 200 injured after a 6.2 magnitude earthquake rocked the border region of Turkey and Syria. It happened just 2 weeks after a pair of deadly quakes devastated the same area. Turkey's disaster agency is now warning the sea level could rise by 50 centimeters and is asking people to stay away from the coast. Authorities say the death toll from the first quakes hit Turkey and Syria is now more than 46,000. In a tweet today, International Development Minister Harjit Sajjan said the news of yet another devastating earthquake in Turkey and Syria is horrifying. We are accelerating the deployment of humanitarian aid to the region. And escalating tensions today as Japan is calling for an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council. It comes as North Korea threatens to turn the Pacific region into a firing range. On Saturday, North Korea fired an intercontinental ballistic missile into the sea off the coast of Japan. It resulted in American air exercises in the region. Today, 2 more missiles were fired into the sea off the Japanese coast. North Korea is demanding a halt to annual American-South Korean military drills.
Our 4 provinces have been working on launching an Atlantic register for physicians and surgeons to improve mobility within the region and to cut down on the unnecessary red tape and administrative burden for physicians who want to work within the region in any of our healthcare systems.
Starting May 1st, a new Atlantic registry will allow doctors to work in New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, PEI, and Newfoundland and Labrador without seeking individual provincial accreditations. Atlantic premiers today announced the program to facilitate physicians and surgeons moving and working throughout the region. And remembering a giant of Canadian arts, longtime National Arts Director Peter Herndorf died this weekend at the age of 82. After a career in the media, the Amsterdam-born lawyer held the reins of Canada's National Arts Institution here in Ottawa for almost 20 years. He was recognized with the Key of the City to Ottawa and the Order of Ontario and the Governor-General's Lifetime Artistic Achievement Award. Well, up next, we bring in the front bench to dig into Legault's migrant demands. Stay right here. Power Play. We'll be right back.
It's a question of numbers, and we simply don't have the capacity to handle that many people right now. This is why other provinces have to do their share. We did more than our share in Quebec.
And that was Quebec Minister Jean-François Roberge on his premier's letter to the Prime Minister demanding the feds redirect asylum seekers entering irregularly to other provinces. Now, have a look at these stats. Quebec has disproportionately seen the most cases of RCMP interceptions of asylum seekers apprehended between official ports of entry at 39,171. Other provinces pale in comparison to Quebec's numbers. BC saw the second most at 289. Then there was Manitoba with 72. Ontario saw 0 RCMP interceptions last year. Ontario did see about 10,000 asylum claims last year at official ports of entry, but Quebec still saw 5 times that with over 50,000 claims at official entry points. So What could the political fallout be for the feds if they don't renegotiate the Safe Third Country Agreement with the United States? Let's bring in our front bench to weigh in. Maryam Monsef is the CEO of Onward and a former Liberal cabinet minister. Larissa Waller with GT and Company, and the former head of communications for Ontario Premier Doug Ford. Kathleen Monk is an NDP strategist and the principal owner of Monk and Associates. And Laura Stone is a Queen's Park reporter for the Globe and Mail. Nice to see you all. Thank you for being here, even though Vashi is not. Maryam, we're going to start with you. Minister Auberge wanted this to be a top priority between Prime Minister Trudeau and President Biden for their meeting that's coming up in March. When you consider the list of other issues that they have to tackle, can we really expect a resolution in the coming weeks?
Mike, I think it's reasonable for Quebec to be asking for support and for additional help. I also can completely understand why folks would prefer coming to Canada over the US. The previous administration's legacy includes that enduring image of children in cages. And even now, the hard-right politicians' rhetoric around immigration newcomers doesn't give that sense of a welcoming country the same way Canada does. Indeed, that's our competitive advantage in the global race for talent. But as far as the Safe Third Country Agreement goes, it's important to note that it will only be renegotiated if and when the U.S. wants it to. And we've heard from the minister that those conversations are happening and they're moving along. But I think something we might see, given the recent pressures, particularly from the Northern Border Security Caucus in the U.S., that motivation that perhaps was lacking before may be there in the near future. In the short term, I think what the feds can do is recognize that there is a labor shortage in Canada, as they have, and that there are parts of the country who have been running pilot programs like the Atlantic region that have turned into permanent programs where those labor shortages and the skills and the drive that these newcomers bring are badly needed. So where the feds can do more, I believe, is providing support around logistics to get newcomers there and to do some of that skills matchmaking that is very much needed for our economy.